All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Shanika Peck. I'm one of the education specialists over at Foundations, Inc. Welcome to our Beyond the Conference webinar series. Today, we have several special guests with us today. We'll get started shortly, but before we do, I would love to give you a little background information on Foundations, Inc. We are a national nonprofit education nonprofit located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. And our mission is to improve the quality of education by building the skills of educators. Many of you may already know us from our signature professional learning experience, the Beyond School Hours Conference, which is held each year in February. In 2025, we will be in Orlando, Florida from February 13th to the 16th. And we'd love for all of you to be our guests there. Registration should be up within the next coming weeks. Just so you know, this webinar will be archived on our website and YouTube, so you'll be able to access it later. Now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Melvina Michi, our Senior Advisor of Strategic Partnerships and Grants.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our session today. This session is one of our final in a series of post Beyond School Hour Conference Showcase of AI by Foundations. We started with an overview of AI in education before and during the conference, and today we will conclude with a session that it will be highlighted and designated to what actually happens within the academic school day as well as after school. And I am happy to hand this part of the webinar right over to Dr. Pati Ruiz, who is our speaker and facilitator, and she will facilitate and our other guests will introduce themselves as well. But I would like to point out that Dr. Ruiz was also one of our guest panelists at our Beyond School Hours Conference in Louisiana this year. So you may have seen her and heard some of her expertise, and I look forward to hearing what she has to share today with our panel of guests today. So it's right over to you, Dr. Ruiz.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I am very happy to be with you all. I am a Senior Director of Learning Sciences and Emerging Technologies at Digital Promise. And on the next slide, you can see that I was in the classroom for 16 years. So I primarily taught middle school and high school computer science and Spanish. Spanish is my first language, before returning to get my doctorate in emerging technologies and learning sciences. I worked as a researcher on the Digital Promise Learning Sciences research team for just over 4 years, and now I am Senior Director of Learning Sciences and Emerging Technologies. I'm excited to be with you today because we've been working on AI in education for a while now. I'm going to start with a few definitions for artificial intelligence. So the White House recently released an executive order, I guess recently, a few months ago, back in 2023. And they define artificial intelligence in a way that I really appreciated. So I wanted to highlight it for you all. So they define AI as a machine-based system that can, for a set of human-defined objectives or goals, make predictions, recommendations, or decisions that influence real or virtual environments. And one of the things that I highlighted in that definition is the human-defined and human-based, right? Artificial intelligence takes data from humans and creates predictions based on associations, based on mathematics, right? And with generative AI, recently, we've seen these AI systems and tools producing content. So in that bullet below, you see the definition of generative AI, which includes synthetic content, right? So human inputs are taken to generate synthetic content, which can include images, videos, audio, text, and other digital content. And one of the reasons we're here is because it's incredibly important for us to be thinking critically about this synthetic content that's being produced and shared in the world. So let me dig in a little bit more. one of the perspectives that we have at Digital Promise is the idea of intelligence augmentation, right? And the use of these AI systems and tools to support us as educators, to support those of us who are working with youth. We like to put educators' professional judgment as well as learners' voice at the center of the design decisions when integrating artificial intelligence in the classroom. We also focus on having humans at the center. So in a recent report that we supported the Office of Educational Technology with, we used an analogy of AI being more like an electric bike than a robot vacuum. With an electric bike, the motor is there to support the human, but the human is still in full control and is doing all of the navigating of this vehicle through space. So we like to think of these AI systems and tools as really supporting the humans. And like I said on the previous slide, human judgment will always be incredibly important for this. So I end up working with a lot of educators, and what those educators end up asking for is professional learning opportunities around AI so that they can build their capacity around this. I will be happy to put links to all of this content in chat for you all to have later, especially this next piece, which I'm very excited about, our AI literacy framework. So at Digital Promise, we're working to release an AI literacy framework paper. And this is a special preview for you all. This was released in February. We're hoping to release the full paper on May 16th, 2024. So keep an eye out for that. We define AI literacy as including the knowledge and skills that enable humans to critically understand, use, and evaluate AI systems and tools to safely and ethically participate in an increasingly digital world. And at the center of this, we have human judgment, which I've mentioned before, as well as justice-centered principles. So let me dig into understanding AI. Understanding AI is the technical knowledge set, and it applies and extends what we know from computer science and computational thinking, which is the skills and practices to be computer scientists. Specifically, the skills and practices that we call out are using data and creating automations, as well as algorithmic thinking, pattern recognition, abstraction, and decomposition. When it comes to using AI, we think of this as building on the research-based frameworks like the 21st century skills that we've been working with as educators for many years. And this includes interacting with, creating with, and applying AI systems and tools as learners or as educators. And then the last one, evaluating AI, we think of as the most critical element to AI literacy. We think that people need to be active users of these technologies, and they need to be able to consider privacy, safety, and societal implications of doing so in their everyday lives, right? And as educators, we do have a responsibility to help folks understand their use of AI. There are lots of considerations that we include in this evaluating section. One that's particularly interesting right now is the problem of ownership and intellectual property, especially because many of these generative AI systems and tools were developed by scraping the internet and taking the intellectual property of authors and artists and using that to generate the synthetic content that we talked about earlier. So it's always important to ask ourselves if this is the best tool for us to use before we even use it, just like we do with any educational technology product. For generative AI specifically, when we're reviewing the results that are output by this synthetic, while we're reviewing the synthetic content, it's really important to do fact checking and what we call lateral reading, or comparing the outputs across other sources, right? And this is just fact checking that we think is really important to include as we're evaluating AI, because we know that generative AI delivers content in a voice that seems very authoritative, but it's sometimes riddled with errors. And then, of course, we want students and educators to be citing their use of generative AI. It's helpful when we model this and when we're transparent about our own AI use. There are other things to consider when evaluating AI, including the environmental impact, which is something that many folks don't think about as much. So the training of these AI systems and tools took a ton of computing power and electricity, and specifically carbon dioxide emissions. They're one way that AI affects the climate. The training of these models took a ton of compute power, and one study showed that it produced the equivalent of around 500 tons of carbon dioxide. That's a lot. It also takes a lot of compute power to query these systems, so to ask a question, because of the many data points that these generative AI systems and tools pull from to get your result. So some studies show that training smaller models takes up as much energy as powering 30 homes in a year. So these are all areas that we need to be aware of when it comes to evaluating AI. And then one final area is an ethical concern around labor exploitation. So in the White House definition, we did see that human-based inputs are used for these AI systems and tools. And what has been found is that many workers are the ones labeling and ensuring that the data going into these models is clean so that we can make sense of them. And these workers are usually working in less developed countries with pay ranges from 2 cents to 50 cents per task. So for a typical hour of their work, they're bringing in about $1 US per hour. So we need to think about who's benefiting from these AI systems and tools, and contrast the profits that are being made by the companies that share those AI systems and tools versus the laborers who are doing the cleaning of the data that we need. So many times we think of AI systems and tools as a black box. And yes, many of those algorithms are hidden within a black box, but there's also a lot of human labor that goes on in the background that we need to be aware of. And then finally, in the context that I'm in, we think a lot about cheating, right? Specifically, high schoolers using generative AI systems and tools, or AI in general, to cheat, right? And recent research shows that the cheating fears are overblown, as this article says. However, for anyone who does work in middle school and high schools, we all know that cheating is already very high. So while these AI systems and tools don't increase it, it doesn't mean that there is no cheating problem. The cheating problem remains. It's just not currently being exacerbated by these AI systems and tools. And it's important for us to help our learners and youth learn to use these systems and tools appropriately. So we know that AI is moving fast, and one of the reasons we're here is that we're the ones that get to decide how we're going to be partnering with these tools. And I'm really excited to dig into this panel discussion with our participants. Before we head over there, I'm going to share one more resource, which I can also link in chat later. And that is our glossary of artificial intelligence terms for educators that we wrote, translating some of these very technical terms into definitions that should be helpful for educators. So with that, I will ask for our slides to be removed and for our panelists to come off mic And we will start with Dr. Hollins. Can you please introduce yourself and give us a quick background on who you are and give us a little bit of information about your current position?
Cool beans. Well, before I dive into who I am, I'll be remiss without giving a quick introduction of our organization, Urban League. Briefly, since 1938, the Urban League of Louisiana has assisted underserved communities in securing economic self-reliance, parity, power, and civil rights in New Orleans. In 2016, the Urban League expanded statewide, becoming the Urban League of Louisiana. In 2017, that's when I joined the organization leading education and youth development, specifically in the Project Ready space. Project Ready focuses on college and career readiness for high school students by providing them with a cadre of academic enrichment, behind the business tours, college tours, dual enrollment, access to industry-based certifications, amongst other activities. But now I'm moving on to myself. Now, currently, I'm at Urban League, the director of the Project Ready program, and I'm on the education committee for the young professional group. So this is near and dear to my heart. Some of my educational background: I'm a graduate of Southern University, A&M College in Baton Rouge. Quick insert is the nation's only historically Black college and HBCU system in existence. I earned my undergraduate degree in 2012 in business management, mine in HR, and my Juris Doctorate degree in 2015. I'm a husband, a father, a director, NFL agent, lawyer, but most importantly, I'm here to serve our students. I'm excited to be on this call. Thank you to Keshia Jenkins, the Louisiana Department of Education. I saw our Executive Vice President, Kathy Washington, aboard, and Ronisha Johnson, who's one of our coordinators at our New Orleans site, because we serve students in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. I'm excited to be a part of this conversation and to speak about how we're using AI to influence college and career readiness and be a support to our systems, our staffs, and our administration.
Thank you, Marlin. Next, someone you already mentioned, Keshia Jenkins. Can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Patty. I am Keshia Jenkins, and I am the Director of Federal Support at the Louisiana Department of Education here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Like Mr. Marlin, I was also educated homegrown here at the great Southern University here in Baton Rouge, and I received my undergrad, my master's, and my postmaster's work around my plus 30 in special education, mild moderate disabilities, all from Southern University as well. I am happy to be here today and just to be in this enriched conversation, to learn more and to see, the different aspects of how AI will emerge in our education sector as we see it more and more and more. I lead the federal programs work here at the Louisiana Department of Education. So this is a program, 21st Century Community Learning Centers, that is near and dear to my heart. It keeps me connected to children. It keeps me connected to going out to sites. But I also deal with all of our other federal formula grants that are under ESSA, our pandemic relief funding that is slowly trickling away, that we will no longer have. So we've been talking to people just about the funding cliffs and being able to do other things with the funding that we still currently will have. So we are busy, but we are busy for children.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Dr. Davis, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. Smith-Davis, currently the principal at Great Plain Elementary School, which is here in Danbury, Connecticut. This is my 20th year here. I've been an educator for over 32 years in Richmond, Virginia, also in Farmville as assistant principal, and now in this role. Was just elected last year as Connecticut's Principal of the Year, a National Blue Ribbon School, and looking to take our students at this elementary level and our staff to a different level. I'm pleased to have had the opportunity to attend Virginia Union University, majoring in data processing, working on my master's at Virginia State University as a lead in technology and vocational education, as well as administration. pleased again today to have the opportunity to talk about some of the things that we are working on here at Great Plain and what we would like to see our students do in the future. I think it's very important that this conversation is held today, discussed, and ideas for the future. I think this is also going to help with some of the things that we have in education, such as the teacher shortage at this time, and trying to make sure that our students earn and get the very best every day when they attend school.
Yes, thank you. It's super important to be meeting the needs of our learners where they are. So as we jump into the first question, I want to make sure that the audience knows that you can share your thoughts with us in chat. And specifically, if you could share how you're using AI during the school day or outside of school time, please feel free to share any resources that or information that might be helpful to us or others in the chat. And I've dropped that question in there so that you have it for reference. I'm going to turn to Kenya with our first question. So this one is around future directions and skill development. So generally, in your communications with fellow colleagues across the states and in conversations within your own state, where do you see AI in education going in the future?
Well, in conversing with my colleagues across the states and just in our general work streams that we're doing, we realize that we're all at different levels of implementation of AI. We all particularly think about it differently, the impacts it has on education and how it can be utilized to serve our students. Now, at our agency, what I have learned over the past couple of weeks is that we have an AI task force that has been put together, and it appears to be those individuals from academia, individuals from the IT sector, individuals that work in business and industry, that help with career paths and certifications for students. So it seems to be a great mix of individuals that can bring different issues, concerns, and recommendations to this particular task force. And what the task force has been set forth to do is to provide recommendations to our Louisiana Department of Education Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, which we call it our BESSY board. And so they're going to be meeting over the next 3 months for sure to just discuss and see what policies can be put in place around AI for our school systems moving forward. So at this time, there isn't any necessarily direct policy that is in place for AI, but we are going in that direction. And I think what the agency tries to do is oftentimes get ahead of anything that the legislature will mandate. And so if we can bring this group of people together to discuss from, all areas of education and industry, the things that could potentially be best for our students, the things that could be issues for our students, I think that's a great start. And that's kind of where we are in the space of AI at this time.
Thank you. And that's incredibly important. The districts that I work with across the country are in a very similar place where they are partnering with their community, asking their learners, their community members for feedback on the policies that they have put out, because this is a learning opportunity for all of us. We're all learning together, and it's a slow going sometimes, and we're going to make mistakes as we go. So incredibly important message for folks to take away from this is that we're all learning and that we can all be learning from one another and asking questions together. Dr. Smith-Davis, do you have anything to add about what you're seeing in terms of AI in education?
Thank you. First off, I'd like to say people are nervous about AI, not sure what it really means, but not even understanding that AI has been here for a long time. It is not something that just showed up today in November, and all of a sudden we're all doing it because we're hearing more about it. A lot of educators just don't realize you've been doing it or the system has been doing it. For example, we have what's called a Smarter Balance Assessment, which levels the students as they do better or do well on a question. It will automatically change. It does grade open-ended responses. And then, of course, this is how you're scored. This is the feedback that you'll get from the state. That, as well as other programs that are out here that do the same thing, have been doing it for a while. I think trying to get people more comfortable with it and trying to get them to understand it's more for us to use these tools to be better educators, to get our students thinking, because that's important, the critical thinking part, and to get us out of the box of what we're normally doing. So what we're actually doing right now with AI, we're using the Chat GPT, also brisk teaching with the teachers. So when we do it, we actually are sitting down with students because of the privacy. We want to make sure that, the students aren't actually doing it themselves, because it's important that the teacher first becomes familiar with the product and what you're actually using. What we do is a lot of project-based assignments. We have them to, for example, rather you always going to have that child that likes this or doesn't like that. What do you do to get those students to be engaged in your activities or your lessons? So you can put this in the chat and be specific. Make sure you put those prompts in there so that you're able to get out what you want in those lesson and activities. I think it's great as far as with our teachers to help them to do things and streamline some of the stuff that we used to do. For example, I've been in this for a while, so I started out when we just wrote out our lesson plans, and it may have taken a weekend or a week to do it. Now you can put the information in, what it is, topics you want to teach, and have information, the feedback given to you based on what you want your students to learn. Rather it's anatomy or biology, we have a very hard time trying to make sure that we cover science as well as some history. So we use the brisk teaching as well as the Chat GPT to help us with that. So teachers input the information and the data to come out with activities and lessons that they want the students to actually to work on. The whole thing is allowing everyone to have access to what it is that you need to be using. There are a lot of platforms that are out there. We've tried in teachers to use the Magic School Plus, which is out there. And I say again, the brisk teaching is free. That is something we is free for you to actually use. The Perplexity AI is another it's a tool that's going to have some more resources for you as an educator to use. And gives you more information. You want the students to become the apprentice. So as a teacher, you're guiding and teaching them what it is that you want them to do. And then, of course, what actually is the output is being a better learner. You want those students to be well-rounded. There are a lot of things that we're trying this year. We are going to be using, we're talking with Columbia University, which is in New York City. Just a person I met, and which is great, who's going to come to our school and help with some of the coding that we've been playing with our second graders in Chat GPTs, forgive me, but to give us some more expertise on it, on how we can use it, because I think it's important to get our students involved in this early on. And we're just excited here at our school to do it. I will tell you the privacy, that's important. The things that we use have to be approved, of course, with FERPA. The state has approved it. However, as far as policies and procedure within the district is something that we're actually just still now in the development working with. So we have to be very careful with what activities and what lessons or what tools that we use. And so the teacher is alongside of the student doing a lot of stuff. We have not released anything into their hands just yet, because it is a lot, and making sure that our teachers are using it. Not just, I think people would take it and use the lessons to like streamline and do different things. You want to make sure you're differentiating. Now you have the opportunity to make sure if we're providing those individual plans for students, that we can do it with AI. We can do it with the tools that we have. And that's what we've been doing and working with.
Yes, thank you so much for those concrete examples. We do see AI as providing opportunities specifically for what you mentioned, including differentiation and allowing teachers to have some relief in terms of some of the administrative tasks that they have. And I really appreciate that you call out that you're not ready for youth to use this on their own. And it's also incredibly important to have these systems and tools modeled appropriately by educators and for students and educators to be learning together. I do want to call out that UNESCO recommends that youth 13 years and younger not use AI systems and tools on their own. So that is one global guidance and recommendation. They're urging governments to quickly regulate that generative AI use in education and research, specifically for 13 years and younger. So just want everyone to be aware of that. And then a recent study that I did doing specifically what Dr. Smith-Davis mentioned that their teachers are doing in terms of having generative AI develop lesson plans. We found that it was incredibly important for that teacher expertise to come in and review those generated lesson plans, because Dr. Smith-Davis, I'm sure you all found where AI's synthetic generated content was not quite what you needed for your context, for your learners, and with your educators. And so I'm sure that you all are modifying those lessons and ensuring that you, the experts as educators, are reviewing that content so it's appropriate, because the context is so important. All right, Dr. Hollins, turning to you. How is AI being used in your education programs to complement and enrich school-based learning? And what specific AI activities are you implementing in your education programs?
Cool beans. Thank you for that question. So initially, when I was preparing for the presentation, I mentioned that we're in our infancy of using AI. But once I started to dig a little deeper, I realized that I guess I can say we're in beta testing mode for a lot of features, or we use traditional AI in a lot of ways. So dealing with high school students, more specifically in the college and career readiness space, academic support, and after school, we all know that you're going to get a Chat GPT paper. Once you read and decode that paper, you'll realize that the human element, that front end piece, is what needs the training, because was it on topic? Was it addressing the right audience? Did it have the right tone? But then I start to look at when students applying for scholarships from the athletic realm, or even from scholastic scholarships, they're using it for personal statements and essays. And then they use photo or for headshots. They'll take a headshot in their school uniform, use their head and put it on a professional background. We saw with videos with Deep Brain, where they'll do a personal statement video in front of a locker, and then they're in a boardroom in the next 2 seconds. So our high school students are quite a bit ahead of the curve than the system or the district or the administrators are. So we're playing catch up in a lot of ways, but teaching them about how to really add the humanization to those prompts, and what do you put in versus what do you get out. And also, you still have to have proofreading and English and grammar to make sure it's in your tone and sound like you, and that it's on level with where you are as a 9th grader or as a rising 9th grader. But when I started to dig deeper into the academic enrichment side, with what we provide through our outside organization and what the school provides, it was a lot of overlapping things. But I realized that as the outside provider, for instance, Princeton Review, we use it with Fidelity, with our ACT small groups, pull-out sessions, after-school enrichment, pointed target sessions with student athletes, because, for instance, Princeton Review used that AI-generated content for SAT and ACT. It create personalized study plans, practice questions based on the knowledge base that the students seem to know and not know, and it helped really use those algorithms to analyze the student performance based on recommended study materials. So as we use Princeton Review with Urban League, East Baton Rouge Parish, for example, has Khan Academy that's very similar, but it mostly focuses on personalized SAT. So we have two different ways that we can approach it, where one of them is all encompassing with traditional standardized testing, SAT and ACT, and the other one was more SAT based. When I look to point out what type of activities have we used with AI, we most recently partnered with our Center for Workforce Development and hosting a pre-apprenticeship career fair for over 200 students between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. The highlight of that was virtual reality. They put on the Oculus, they were able to be surgeons, and our executive VP, Kathy Washington, was talking about how she did the wrong cut and blood splattered all over herself. So they're able to go from surgeons to engineers to electricians to scale buildings and accounting. So that piece, when you talk about college and career readiness, it brings those behind the business tours and those guest speakers and put it in perspective so they can see and feel and understand what it is in there. And then when I looked at another activity over for STEM Day last year, we partnered with our national affiliate, National Urban League. We did HTML and coding workshop. So over 4 virtual sessions, our students in a small group connected with some college students at Washington University who formed a company called Vela, and they built websites from the ground up. They used an AI-generated website that from scratch. You know how you can use GoDaddy or Canva and other AI-generated systems that already have the scale or the framework. These students went in and used HTML in 4 weeks, built personal websites. We had narratives from resumes. We had an artist who was able to upload his pictures and create a virtual store. So just simply embracing the tools that are out there, we're able to build on those things much more. And then another app I want to point out was Circled In. When we think about the college admissions process and the one app system where you upload one personal statement and one resume, and it applies to everyone who's inside of that platform. When we looked at extracurricular experience, athletics-based activities, some of those things were quite missed a little bit, but it's the app called Circled In that aligns your extracurricular and experience out of school with universities that has out of school programming that fits that. So whereas you're looking for a major, say me, I wanted to major in business and I chose Southern for all of the greatness. But when you look at, is there a fraternity you want to be involved in? Is there ACT, academic group, NAACP, different other organizations that support the work that you're doing, then there are so many other pieces that from profiles. And again, we're with high school students. So they're on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. They're already using these platforms, but teaching them with intentionality how to use them to create those career and college opportunities and connect them to funding, which is a big thing that most of our marginalized communities miss.
Thank you. Yes, super important, specifically to tailor this to the communities that we're working in. Kenya, anything else to add in terms of context or specific examples that you're seeing where you are?
At the state level, it's pretty open-ended at this point. And I think Mr. Marlin made a very, very great point, is that we're playing catch up. So kids have already been utilizing these things. Our innovative teachers have already been utilizing these things. And so us at the state level, we're trying to catch up and say, okay, how do we make sure they're using it with intentionality? How do we make sure safety and privacy are in place? And so I believe that is the work that task force is going to be starting in, just making general policies. And I think that those general policies and that task force will need to keep in mind that this will probably be an ongoing task force. So I think what will happen is it will turn from a task force to a standing committee, because this is going to be ever changing. And I think that they're going to have to realize that it's changing, and knowing that, okay, these are some things that we may have to look at annually, and being involved with our educators and bringing them into the conversation, because they're going to be seeing it a lot more than we are.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that you bring in the evaluation piece again. So when we think about evaluating AI, it's important to consider transparency in terms of the models and data sets that we're looking at. It's important to consider safety or understanding how our information is being used and collected and how we might be able to delete that data from these systems. Because when I hear free, I hear my data is being used for something and I should be aware of it. Parents should be aware of it. And it's an incredibly important part of evaluating AI, Kenya, which you are thinking about at the level that you're at. And then, of course, you also mentioned the ethics. How is AI perpetuating the issues of access and inequity? And who's being harmed by these systems, who's benefiting, and how? And then the impact, right? And Dr. Hollins mentioned this, like how do we know that this tool is appropriate? How do we center the human judgment in the decision making? And how do we ensure that this output is credible? So let's turn to our next question about fostering AI in education programs and how that might contribute to a well-rounded education. And let's go to Dr. Smith-Davis first, and then Dr. Hollins, I'll turn to you afterwards.
Thank you, because the AI, again, it's all about what the human actually is putting in the system, right? The information that is actually in whatever tool we're going to use, somebody put that in there. So we want to make sure that we understand the biases that and read through whatever it is that we're using these tools for. I think that as far as well-rounded individuals, I think as Kenya was saying, we are behind. Kids are using these things more and more in order for us to make sure that they're ready for the next level of their lives, whatever that may be. We need to make sure that we have the right tools and showing them what it is, what's possible for them to do. I think it's important as educators that we understand we are not trying to continue doing the same thing that we've done year after year. This is supposed to be something that will help us to better us as educators in order to move our students forward. You want students to be highly engaged. I think making sure that that interest, you tap on to what interest that child has and foster that learning. I think, and talking about the social emotional part of this, how do you incorporate those things that you're trying to teach in the classroom, everyday life, using this tool to help you with that? I see this as a way for our teachers to be able to come up with those activities and those to push their thinking, looking at whatever was given back to them to push what it is to the next level for themselves. That's the only way we're going to be able to support our students, by making sure we're not in the box, because all of our children learn differently and they're already involved in a lot of AI and activities and different things on a daily basis. So I think it's more making sure we're ready and prepared.
Thank you so much. Yes, very important for us to be aware. Dr. Hollins, what do you think?
Cool beans. So when I think of the well-rounded education experience, I'm really thinking cradle to career. And how are we going to move the needle from our students from the elementary side where Dr. Smith-Davis is to how are we going to get them bountifully, skillfully, and gainfully employed? So I guess the first thing when I think about, I was at this conference and they asked, have you ever visited this website? I'll drop it to you. It's Will Robots Take My Job? Okay. And then once you look in, it shows you the probability of what jobs are available and how the AI market is growing. But when you sit back and notice, I went to Target yesterday and I noticed that it was one live checkout. It was about 20 self-checkouts. That's artificial intelligence. And the one stewardess had to know how to code the system, use the back end, put in the overriding code. It was very AI based. So when I start looking at it in the granular side of things, I start to think about, if we don't embrace it, we'll be in the realms of those who use the typewriter and were afraid to use a computer. And then those jobs eventually involve to everyone use a computer or some type of computer-based software. So where were you if you didn't embrace using a computer? And what is that trajectory of our students now if we teach them to embrace AI? So for Urban League of Louisiana, again, using some programs that we already, or some applications that we use a system called Cooter Navigator. And from Cooter Navigator, we realized that on the front end experience, we gain it as administrators as well as the students, because it's assessments, it's inputting data, it's managing student profiles. But then when you look at the end user data, how are we interpreting the information that come out of there? Cooter does a good job of taking a career aptitude test and rank it with the 5 best colleges that fit those majors based on more than career aptitude, based on your GPA, based on your ACT score, based on the sample personal statement that you loaded. It tells you what careers that you're most in line with. It gives you your top 5. It tells you about social and emotional learning and what skills you already have to build into those levels. And then when you dig a little deeper inside of that college and career readiness, again, the school system also is already starting to use its infancy phases with it, but outside programming, like what we're doing with Cooter, is using it a bit more with Fidelity. So we have Cooter Navigator, which is career assessment. The school use Naviance and CollegeVine. Another resource is My Major. My Major simplifies it a little bit and doesn't really give you that end user plan to tell you you should intern here, you could use community service here. It gives you specifically majors that are dictated based on your area, which jobs are in demand in your area, what's the job propensity or projection of how many jobs will be available in that space. So we use it for well-rounded education to really connect them to careers, spark that interest, where traditionally we probably all did a paper career aptitude test, and then you looked at the alphabets, and then you stood in groups. With technology now, it's giving them a full work plan. If you want to be a CEO of this interest, of this level, or this company, you should possibly take these routes. 40% of the CEOs of tech-based companies went to this university. So it gives them so much more meat that we're able to digest as administrators. So we can say, hey, when we're bringing in virtual career fairs or in-person career and college fairs, that we want to target these universities with these majors. We want to target these companies who are looking for this specific set of students. So we're able to use it intentionally to create well-rounded education, as well as allow the students to use it to see or to chart their own path. And we're only given the guidance and support that supports that. And if you hear a little girl talking, it's spring break in EBR, and I have a 3-year-old. So every 2 seconds, she's saying, Daddy, can I talk? Can I talk? I told her she can get on at the end, so she'll pop up.
Wonderful. She can give us our takeaway message.
Thank you.
So let me turn it over to you, Kenya, and ask you what challenges, barriers, and roadblocks your grantees may have shared with you as they try to integrate AI into their teaching and learning.
Well, when we started talking about AI and the potential for this webinar and just the potential for this work in the out of school time sector, I just kind of did a poll of our 21st century programs. We have 37 grantees here in Louisiana. And I did a poll really quickly to see what feedback I could get from them. And Mr. Marlin in the Urban League of Louisiana was pretty much the group that was kind of at the forefront of actually implementation of AI. The other programs had questions and were interested, but had not fully delved in to the actual use of AI around teaching and implementation and just after, out of school time. And of course, we are working with programs that do, K through 12. And so a lot of programs really concentrate in our elementary school area. We have a few at middle school, and then we get even less with high school. So those who focus on our high school really are going in that career and tech education route for our students. So what we've decided to do is, because we constantly want to do improvement and continuous improvement for programs, is now we're looking for ways and professional development to bring to them, to kind of spark the interest, to say, okay, this is where you can begin. This is where this can lead you to. So we're working on a professional development series with our programs to be able to provide them with some additional support around what AI could look like in an out of school time setting. And I think it's very important for them. And we have some others that are on the line as well. Urban Support Agency from Caddo is on, and they actually participated in the conference and did a panel session where we saw, you know, a student that is really, really benefiting from the things that are being offered in out of school time. And she wants to be an artist. And I can just imagine being able to have some tools that she could utilize from an AI sector to enhance her artistry. So we're going to work at our level to be able to provide them with some professional development resources, some professional development training around AI and how, again, you can use it with fidelity, and that you kind of, and I think I love what Dr. Smith-Davis said, is that the children aren't utilizing it alone, that it is a collaboration. And I think that is going to be a big push, especially for our lower level grades that we're working with. And so that's kind of where we're going. So the barriers and the challenges were that people weren't really taking advantage of it. We noticed that, we found that out. And so our job then becomes, how can we support them and bring in this additional resource and avenue for them?
I really appreciate that you call out the importance of professional learning, and that's certainly something that we focus on ourselves. And when we think about giving guidelines and guardrails for educators as they're using these AI systems and tools, we find that those are incredibly important. And one recommendation is to provide just a one-pager to your educators on what they should and shouldn't be doing. Specifically, I've heard a lot about differentiation, for example, and we want to make sure that educators are aware of things like students' personal identifying information should never be put into these generative AI systems and tools. That's a big no, but it needs to be made clear for educators because not everyone's on the same page. And we make sometimes some assumptions about how much educators know, especially, you know, the younger generations. We assume that because they're expert users of TikTok, that they understand the pedagogical nuances of technology integration in learning settings. And in many instances, they don't. They also need guidance, just like our students do. Sometimes our misconception is that our students know more than we do about using technology and appropriate use of technology, when in fact, they also need guidance. They might know how to use specific features of tools, but they also need some guidance in terms of how the tool is working in the background, what it means for their own privacy and data use. So, since we're on the topic of challenges and roadblocks, Dr. Hollins, I'll turn to you. What challenges, barriers, or roadblocks have you encountered as you integrate AI into your setting?
Thank you. So I tried to divide it shortly into 3 sections to address one: barrier, challenge, and roadblock. I realized after talking to the team that some barriers we have, of course, what both of them will say, have already said, are access to technology, which are both devices and connectivity. When we start to look at the population of students we serve, which is largely African American, we have issues with fewer resources, lower quality of instruction, higher rates of disciplinary actions. And when we use or we look at AI-driven intervention and how some of those inequities exist and what we don't have, and those barriers will be further exacerbated because we don't provide, or some of the students don't have the opportunity or the access to that connectivity. If we are able to change the needle and address the major cause of it, we can give more students those AI-driven interventions that will ultimately impact their career success. When I look at opportunities from STEM or representation in these AI-based fields or in fields that are similar to it, that's another barrier that exists. But I believe that by addressing these challenges, we can collectively use AI to promote equity and inclusion across education and the workforce. When I look at some challenges, I think the biggest challenge we have is fear, and it's fear across the spectrum, fear from the educators, fear from the administrators, fear from Ms. Kenya at DOE, fear from employers. It's this whole attitude of embracing it. And how do we move forward with it, with the hesitancy and with the reluctancy, but also embracing the change and being able to get ahead of that professional development curve so we can learn how to use it and what to do and how to implement it. And one of the roadblocks, I think, is just varied implementation between courses. That means each teacher, each school in that district. It's 64 parishes in Louisiana, and I'm sure every different school district is implemented differently. And then when we look across the state, it's 50 states. How is Louisiana implemented opposed to New York or California? So I think the access to technology, challenges with fear or those hesitancies and reluctancies, and then roadblocks in the implementation are the biggest ones that I've seen with working with high school students and nonprofits.
Thank you so much. And we only have 2 minutes. So Dr. Smith-Davis, quickly, one breath, what is your takeaway message for us?
Don't be afraid of it. It's coming. It's already, well, I shouldn't say it's coming. It's already been here. You can do it. There are people who are out here to support you with this. The mindset is very important in order to change or to make things different or to move whatever company, school, or business. The mindset has to be there. And AI is nothing to be afraid of. Think of it as you're not going to be doing things the same way. Yes, it will help in some of the activities that you do. But if we're really into education and trying to help our students, we want to make sure that they are able to do this and they are ready for the next level of their lives.
Thank you. And Dr. Hollins, and then Kenya, I will give you the last word.
Cool, man. I'll keep this one super short. Learn AI, use AI, embrace AI, and teach AI, because it's not going anywhere and it's only going to get more and more robust.
Thank you. And Kenya?
I'll just say, as you mentioned, professional learning is important for our educators, whether they're during the school day or out of school time. And we, again, as everyone has said, we have to embrace this as it is here. And we don't have any other way but to move forward in this vein and to be able to actually prepare our students for that next, that next chapter of life that they so look forward to upon graduation. I think we're setting them up for success. And I think in a lot of situations, they can teach us. And so I think, this has been a great panel discussion today. I think we've gotten a lot of great information and have some things that we can follow up on afterwards. I definitely will for our people here in Louisiana. And thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Kenya, and thank you to the Foundations team. It's been wonderful to participate on this Post Beyond School Hours Conference webinar series. I've learned a lot today, and I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Sylvia Lyles for a wrap-up.
So for those of you who are here, if you could just please, in however way whether it's a chat or if you just want to clap your hands, just please join me in thanking the panel. It was such a great opportunity. And I just want to, point out that we have a special guest with us, Marlin, your daughter. This is an example of the work that we do. This is who we do this work for. So Marlin, you wanted to give her one of the last words. We have a couple of other people, but you want to say something?
There you go. Say your name.
Hey, my name's Connor.
Hi. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank
We're
you.
doing all this work so that we can help you to be all that you want to be in the future. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. I just want to thank, thank you so much for for joining us. You were with us at the Beyond School Hour Conference. As Malvina mentioned when she first started, she said this concludes our work, but it concludes our showcase from the Beyond School Hour Conference. It doesn't conclude our work with AI. We encourage you to please look for our future webinars, because we're going to take this to the next stage. We're going to do a deeper dive and learning about the specific, all the different information that was provided from the panel members today, how to actually use that material, those tools and those skills, and to provide the professional development that we really want to be able to help you to do. So stay tuned. There's more work to do, and we look forward to hearing from everybody. Please share whatever you're doing with Foundations, Inc. And I would like to just ask our CEO, Rhonda Lauer, just to make one final comment, please, and then we'll close it out.
Okay, be glad to. I want to thank the panelists. Pate, you're wonderful. All of you. Kenya, I'm so glad to see you. Mwah. This was excellent. I actually texted Sylvia Lyles over there towards the end, and I said, this is one of the best webinars I have been to. I have learned so much. I want to thank you. Let's continue this. If you have any questions, if you have any issues that you would like to bring up, please make sure you get to us. We always respond at Foundations within 24 hours. And Marlin, your daughter is adorable. So this is for her and the future. So thank you very much. Thanks.
All right. So Foundations, Shanika, if you want to take us out.
Of course. Yes, so thank you again to our guests for that fruitful conversation. I'm going to give everyone just a few more seconds to grab those resources that was shared in the chat. Those resources will also be shared with you in our follow-up social media posts. So if you aren't following us on LinkedIn or any of our social platforms, please make sure you are following us so that you can grab those resources. A certificate of attendance will be sent out within a week to all of you who attended live. We'll also again have this recording posted on our website and our YouTube channel. So take a look at, review the video there as well. We will also pick up with our Beyond the Conference webinar series. April 10th at 1 p.m. We will have our friends from Right Brain, Meredith Scott Lynn and Latoya Sabri. But before we end, please make sure you get a chance to fill out our feedback form. I've been dropping the link in the chat. Take a minute or two, give us some feedback, share your thoughts. Again, a lot of the resources that we shared today will be reshared again with you in our follow-up. So thank you all for joining us today for this fruitful conversation, embracing technology, especially AI, and preparing our youth and ourselves for the future. Right? Thank you everyone for joining us. And again, a link to our feedback form is in the chat box. Take care, everyone.